So the one sheet that you have here is just our budget request summaries. I think we'll just go around, try to start correct on the transportation budget requests.
Just maybe to give a little background, so obviously we went through this process a year ago. It was a little bit more abbreviated because I think I came on board January, but did some consulting for the city the previous year to get the requests in line and sort of professionalize that process a little bit. And then this year was just another continuation of that. And we got the council's blessing over the summer on a list of projects. Andy and I and Mark and Craig continue to refine the official requests. We don't have those finalized today for the legislators, but you'll see me once January rolls around and we'll hand those official letters over. But I think what we have in front of you is kind of a good summation of the 6 different projects we'll be looking at for the session, and then we'll let the experts kind of walk you through the details. But I think we have a good list of requests. I also think it's fairly modest considering some of the demands that are going to be on the capital budget this session in particular. Looking at some of the governor's priorities, he has a lot on the plate for you guys. So we don't want to ask for anything that's too out of realm of possibility. I think that staff has done a good job putting this list together, and the council blessing the list, so we don't get too far out of our skis come January. So with that, I'll let Craig kick off the hard part.
So first one on the list is the intersection at Wallace Nealon and Shelton Springs Road, if you're familiar with that one. It's the one that's leading to the high school. Signalized intersection at this point that is having its struggles, especially in the AM and PM peak hours, right before school, right after school, and especially with a couple of fairly large projects. Maybe Mark can speak to the details of D.R. Horton and the development up across from the high school. I'll kick it over to him.
Sure,
just to kind of explain those factors.
Yeah, so for the first time in probably Shelton's history, we've had a large national builder move into the city. They have purchased 49 lots at Shelton Springs subdivision. It's just northeast from Shelton High School, just north of the bus barn, if you know where that is. That's been a subdivision that had the infrastructure in place for nearly 11 years and was basically sitting dormant with construction. And they have permitted 41 of those lots so far that are under construction. I think a couple are being final in the next week. So we're going to see some significant development in that area. As far as residential, that will impact not only the school reconfigurations, but YMCA is going to be adjacent to the schools too in the near future.
So Mark hit on those other couple of factors there. So you've got the very large expansion of D.R. Horton up right across from the high school, very close to this intersection. You've also got the expansion of Shelton High School, which basically adds 1 full grade level up into that area. So leaving the junior high with 2 grade levels and expanding the high school to 4 from 3. So obviously adding some impact to that intersection. And then the proposed YMCA, which is going to be right adjacent to that intersection. Also with the very large hospital expansion, not too far from this intersection that is permitted and is going to happen, construction starting here in the near future. And then also the proposed tiny home site that's right up in that area also. I think one thing that we have heard, a little misconception there, is those folks don't drive. They've even come in and told us that basically the first thing that those folks do when they get back on their feet is they buy a car. So obviously with 30 more residents up in that area, if that project does move forward, having a fairly significant impact to that intersection also. That's also having, it's already having a pretty decent negative effect to motorists in that area. So basically what we're seeing right now, especially in the AM peak hours, is the intersection getting flooded with traffic, and the cross traffic turn heading basically out of town on Wallace Nealon. All of those folks trying to get to school, they're waiting for the light to turn red, and then there's like 2 cars that are just running that red light. to get through the intersection. That's how the movement is now. We've tried to modify it. We've tried to make some adjustments to that intersection. And with our traffic engineer, they've suggested leaving it, that it's functioning at its highest capacity and function right now, which is concerning. Proposed, we have looked at, and we have SCJ Alliance out of Olympia on contract right now for 10% design of a roundabout, not only at this intersection, but also affecting the four-way stop at the next intersection up, heading out of town at 13th Street.
Would this pay for both or just the one?
This would just pay for the one.
Okay.
And the reason for the ask on this one is we had the Transportation Improvement Board engineers in just last summer, and they had indicated since that intersection was signalized now, it would not be eligible in any capacity for a TIB grant. The four-way stop would be. That was kind of the thought, is to run these in conjunction and ask for a TIB grant in 2019 to pay for at least a portion of the four-way intersection at 13th, run these in conjunction with each other, just for economy of scale and getting the reduced cost for that, and actually do pavement between the intersections also. So that is the reason for only asking for one of the two.
Is the funds from, you have listed there from Mason General and the Shelton School District, are those assured? I mean,
They are, through traffic impact fees.
Okay.
They have already paid those.
Okay.
Both of them have already been paid. The other ones that we didn't list that could be potential would be the traffic impact fees from the YMCA, and also potentially the tiny homes project also. So we did not list those as a partner now, just because we didn't have those in hand, but we certainly have the school and Mason General in hand. And then also, I guess, do you have any other questions on that one?
you have money for an educational component for drivers to learn how to use roundabouts.
We're starting with the one that we've got downtown. We'll have that one constructed this spring. So
Use the lacy, let them drive around lacy.
there you go. Get them out of town for a little bit. But that does bring up a good point. We will have the first ever roundabout in Shelton come this spring down at First and Alder. So we'll start to get the motoring public used to roundabouts in Shelton.
Is 7th going to be a lit intersection then?
It will.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have didn't have the room right away to do anything
Sure.
other than a signalized intersection in that area. But it will be a new signal, new cabinet, and some new configuration down there also.
Can I tell my roundabout story? You okay with that?
As long as it's a good one.
It's a good story. It's a good story. So it was about 10 years ago, and my wife has cousins in England. So we went to London and visited them, and we were in London for a week and rode the subway the whole time. Decided to rent a car. So I rented a car down by Windsor Castle, and it was about 5:30 in the evening when I get into this car. Fortunately, I got an automatic, so I didn't have to shift gears with my left hand. But immediately pull out. I was in the right lane, except a block down was a roundabout. And I got stuck on the inside of this roundabout, going backwards, basically, from what we're used to. And I finally was able to, it was a 4-lane roundabout. A 4-lane roundabout. And after about 8 times around, I was able to squeeze over each time, head out, and our daughter who was with us, she was my navigator, paper map. She goes, "Dad, good job getting out of the roundabout," but you took the wrong exit. Next roundabout, back we came.
Isn't that a Chevy Chase movie?
It is.
Yeah,
That's exactly what
I think you're right about
Your
that, Troy. Yeah.
The only thing that I would point out related to this is the YMCA funding. They applied for the Building Communities Fund competitive grant through Department of Commerce and got $3.5 million from that. It's in the governor's budget, and it ranks fairly high on the list of projects. So I think they're going to need just a little tiny bit more to close the final deal on that. But it looks like all signs are positive for that going in. So
Good.
One other, I guess, notable aspect to this project and the one that you mentioned on the four-way stop at 13th is no land acquisition would be needed, plenty of right-of-way. We own a couple of storm ponds that abut that intersection, so pretty easy build once we get into it. No land acquisition would be needed.
Good.
Yeah. So the other one that we've got for you on the transportation side is Railroad Avenue. And unfortunately, we're going to give you two different scenarios here. We were hoping to have an answer for you whether we were going to get a partnership from Mason County on this one. But we did apply for a TIB grant back in the summer, got awarded in November for not only sidewalks, but the roadway pavement also at the amount of just over $760,000. And that was basically from, the project limits were from 8th Street to the city limits. We have expanded that since we got that from 7th Street, so basically where the old funeral home was, the signalized intersection at 7th out to the city limits. After we received that grant, we started talking with the county about a partnership to expand that project from the city limits all the way out to 101, connecting up with the park and ride that's out right at 101. We have not gotten an answer back from them. Ran into a little bit of a snag that I think the mayor is working through with one of the county commissioners. They're going to have a discussion on some points on that, but by the time session rolls around, we will have an answer for you whether this is a project from 7th to the city limits or it's from 7th to 101.
Where exactly is the city limits? Is 101 the city limit essentially, or is it past that?
No, it's at city limits are at Pacific Court.
Turning
There's a
point.
fancy
Point area, yeah.
Fancy signs out there that says, "Welcome to Shelton."
I'm usually looking out for patrol officers.
49 steering wheel?
Yeah. 25 right there. No, so Drew, basically where you, there's the Welcome to Shelton sign at 12th Street when you come into town now. Basically, it's about 4 blocks back towards 101. It's about total half the distance. It's about a full mile from 7th to 101, and the project is basically half county, half city. So if that gives you some kind of context there, but the proposal would be new sidewalks, ADA ramps with a future larger project for a Safe Routes to Schools program for Choice School and Mountain View. We get a lot of foot traffic from kids down in that area. We have phased it out over 3 different phases. This is phase of Access Shelton. It's phase 4A. B would be the section between Alder and 7th Street, or Alder and Coda on 7th. So basically the roadway right behind Safeway. And then phase C in a couple of years would be that entire west downtown Shelton, new sidewalks, ADA ramps, and a Safe Routes to Schools project. So this would just be the first phase of it, but basically sidewalks both north and south side of the road on Railroad from 7th to 12th. And then there is no existing sidewalk from 12th out to the city limits, so the proposal would be a sidewalk only on the south side of the road across the street from the tracks that we have now that we're dealing with. Illumination, some landscaping along that corridor also to screen off those tracks, hopefully. Just make it a better entryway into Shelton. And then if the county actually partners with us, expanding that sidewalk on the south side of the road all the way out to 101 with new roadway surface, illumination, and landscaping.
What about railroad tracks? Is that just going to stay railroad tracks for now, or
It is. We don't have,
ownership of it? Yeah.
right, it's still Simpson and they still own it. So eventually, I mean, I know Mark and I have talked a bunch about some kind of trail system and getting those out of there, but we haven't been able to get there yet. So I don't know how far down the road that is. When we did the corridor study a while back, It does identify that trail system, and at this point, what we presented to the county and the council was the concept of just the sidewalks now on the south side of the road, and then if we acquire the tracks later on, some sort of rails to trails type project to incorporate that also.
Cool.
And then I guess I'm first on the list for Cap. You want to just keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other one, as far as public works goes, for the city of Shelton would be the well 1 main rehab. Right now we've got a failing. So basically we've got 3 wells in Shelton, all on the north side of town, one across the street from the college, which is well 1. The other 2 are right by where the disc golf course is. Wells 3 and 4 located over there. 2 has been abandoned and failed on us a number of years ago. That's why we never referenced well 2. But well 1 has had a drawdown issue. We would like to go in, rehab that well, and then basically right now we've got a gravity water line, a water main from well 1 all the way to the high school tank, which is located right behind the library. It's about 5,000 feet of water main. It's an open air gravity water main. Talking to Department of Health, it might be the last one in the state of Washington. But unfortunately, being one of the last ones, if not the last one in Washington, they don't have any sort of funding source to grant a project of that scale. So we have checked quite a few different areas as far as grants go, but basically this is where we're at to get that rehabbed and pressurized. So basically what the proposal is right now is to go in and line that with some sort of cured in place, not replace the actual main, but put in some sort of cured in place liner inside of that. We would have to create a booster pump station across the street from the college at well 1 to pressurize that and actually push water through that water main to the high school tank. But it has been a concern of ours for quite some time. Basically, we've just got manholes along that route of that water source, and it is the main water source for all of Shelton. That's where distribution comes from. It goes to the high school tank and then goes down through the Angleside booster pumps that are down at the city shop downtown, and also pushes water to Capitol Hill. So it is the main feed for all of Shelton's potable water.
Hey Craig, can you explain what an open air gravity fed water transmission is? I'm not sure.
If I had to generalize it, it's kind of like a storm line. It runs downhill. It's gravity down from the well 1 down to the tank, where it ultimately ends up dumping into the top of the high school tank, and then is gravity out of that down to the booster pump.
So what's the open air? What does that mean? Open air.
Most water lines are pressurized so that they keep contaminants, other things out of the system. This one is not. This one basically just flows through the pipe downhill to the tank.
Okay.
Don't you have an open air reservoir though, over on, is it 8th or over behind the library? Isn't that part of the drinking water, or is that?
That's stormwater.
That's stormwater. Okay.
Yeah, that actually comes. We used to utilize the spring house for drinking water. That basically discharges into the creek now and ends up in that retention pond. That's stormwater now behind the library. Correct.
So just an input, Craig didn't ask for any, but I'm going to give it anyways. I happened to just finish a master's thesis a few months ago. One of the papers I wrote was exactly what he's talking about in public safety. And it was nothing to do with the construction of it. It was to do with homeland security, and you can contaminate the entire city's water supply in an instant with that type of system.
Yeah.
So I mean, it also brings public safety to it, as well as it brings just the infrastructure part.
Let me ask you a question. USDA, have you talked to USDA?
We have most of the loans. Most of those would be loans. So that would certainly be a decision for the council if we don't get some sort of funding, whether that would have to be a loan or not.
He's very interested, the local rep for USD, very interested to see how he can give back for economic development and for infrastructure, so.
Former state senator.
Yeah, for former state senator Kirk Pearson's, he's basically begging us to ask. So if you can set up an appointment with him to see if maybe they can find a suite of services that'll help.
Sure, that'd be great.
And then someone like security, have any grants in this area along those lines that might be worth looking into?
Yeah.
Especially because of what Chief just said, I think we should look at all those options. And you know that it's going to be tight in the capital budget this year. We don't want to short sell. We always got your back, but we don't know how big the capital budget's going to be. So if we can be looking at multiple pots, it'll be a lot better for us.
Absolutely. Off
All
to you,
right.
Mark.
I'll take the next three. The first two that you see here, Evergreen Town Square and the Civic Center parking lot, were born out of the Downtown Visioning Plan in 2015, if you're familiar with that. It was a community-led project. The city, the chamber, and Green Diamond funded the study and brought in Methuen and walkable communities and came in and ran a number of community charrettes and engagement activities to help kind of plan and conceptualize what downtown might look like. In the future, what you've seen with the Railroad Avenue road diet, shrinking that down, painting sidewalks, that type of simple stuff, I guess. Might not have been real simple, but
not with the back and angle part.
not from the outside, it might have been. Was kind of the start of that. And these kind of, I guess, are next steps. First one is Evergreen Town Square. That was identified as more of a gathering space and meeting space potential rather than just a parking lot. It could serve both purposes. We're seeing a lot of events there now. The chamber's running events there. It's kind of a centralized area for both of our parades here in town, but it could be expanded upon. Our farmers market is a block and a half or close to that away, kind of on side streets. We could expand upon those events that are happening downtown, put them right on the main corridor on Railroad. They're visible, gets people out of their cars, gets them walking around our community, visiting other shops and stores, and seen as an economic development, as well as improving the parking lot again to encourage people to get out of their cars, park there, get around town, visit. Most likely it's conceptualized at this point, but the master plan called for kind of a larger promenade or just widening the sidewalk to basically the width of the clock tower. Space, you'd lose some parking potentially on the front for those events, but the 3 rows of parking would stay from the buildings where John L. Scott and Evergreen Square businesses are located out to the middle of the parking lot. And then during the week, that promenade could be utilized for parking when there wasn't an event. You provide tie downs for tents, some power hookups, that type of thing. Make it more amenable to inviting these activities and these events downtown Shelton. Civic Center parking lot was seen as a similar project. That charrette, they really talked about creating just park space, green space. I think we rethought that a little bit and really thought that this is existing parking that would be hard to replace in the future. But it needs some improvement to get people to utilize it properly. So if we just looked at creating parking, it might not meet all the goals and the intent of the people that are involved in those activities. So we could provide recreational amenities there as well. Centennial Lions Club is committed to purchasing some basketball hoops. The city's Parks and Rec department purchased some pickleball equipment that could be utilized for recreational functions after hours when it's not being used for parking. We can address some of our stormwater issues, landscaping issues, and things like that as well down there because it's a gravel parking lot that isn't quite inviting, I guess, for the downtown community. And as we hopefully grow downtown and increase visitors and users down here with the Railroad Avenue project, bringing them into town, one more opportunity to get them to get out of the cars, park in a safe, welcoming environment, and move around our business community would be welcome.
So we're talking paving and striping is what that would look like,
Essentially,
basically.
a little bit of landscaping, yeah.
Sure.
But, yeah.
So you
stormwater.
you guys saw this request from the
Yeah.
city last year. It was
Correct.
substantially smaller, but that was literally paving the lot.
Yeah.
I think Mark's taken the opportunity to
Yeah.
put some more. into it.
Last year, we were, at a minimum, we'd do it in-house. We'd go in, basically just put pavement down, call it good, in-house. We have a limit on our public works projects at 65,000?
65.
65, what can be done. That, we might not be able to do that at this point anymore, with costs associated with that, so
What's that limit
it
due
takes you.
to?
What's that?
What's that limit due to?
Bid limit, bid law.
Okay.
Yeah, on local government, we are, the committee that I'm probably not going to be on anymore, but we are considering raising that in-house amount of money up
Great.
a bit, maybe to 100,000 or somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000. We get a lot of kickback from the business community, right? Because the idea is encourage, but my goal is let's have a happier medium that if you can do things in-house and save your taxpayers money, I want you to be able to do that. So we're working on maybe trying to get that number a little higher.
There was a bill that did that last session. It kind of stalled out.
Yeah, it did. There was significant pushback, but I think we need to accept that you have capabilities and you're paying good and wage incomes to do it, so in-house anyway. So
Certainly would provide us more flexibility in making those decisions
Yeah.
and moving forward, absolutely. Appreciate that. Yeah. Anything else on those two? Well, I guess I should mention, the city commissioned a study on Railroad Avenue corridor solely after that downtown visioning plan. It was part of the commerce package after Simpson closed down, so in 2017 that was finished. And so the Evergreen Town Square and the Railroad Avenue improvements were part of that project as well. So we brought in consultants and they looked a little more closely at the potential for those projects down there and kind of refined what that looked like. So it's kind of been two different public vetting processes, I guess, for those projects. The Historical Museum, we were approached by Mesa County Historical Society to partner on the purchase of the old Main Tree, downtown Shelton. Most people that grew up here know what a Main Tree is.
Yep.
It's adjacent to their existing museum. They're out of space. You might, if you're familiar with their discussions lately when they lost the fairgrounds and their museum out there, they've got a lot of materials in storage right now. They'd like to open up more museum space to display their artifacts and wares. And being adjacent to their existing museum now would certainly meet their needs. The intent was to facilitate that purchase, and then they would operate their expanded museum out of that location right on Railroad Avenue.
Who currently owns that building? Do you know?
It's private ownership. It was the restaurant owners. I don't remember their last name.
So the people that had the restaurant own the building?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's been for sale for 6-8 months at least.
It used to be the Locke family.
It used to be locked down.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know if it's still in their family or not.
No. And the Historical Society does have a match, if you see it there. They committed to that $8,900. But it would take some significant renovations as well to bring it. They'd like to bring it back to, it was actually first post office in Shelton at that time. So they'd like to bring it back to that theme and architecture so it has more appeal and historic.
So again, I mean, process-wise, and I know the House Democrats announced committee assignments late Thursday. You guys still don't quite know what.
19th, we'll know.
So this week. Obviously, again, I know the city is expecting us to bring all these home. I'm just kidding. Obviously,
Of course.
there's a prioritization process that goes into it, but again, we try to keep the list modest and include projects that were well vetted and had matching funds, particularly on the transportation side.
And it sounds like you built in scalability to some of these projects as well, so we don't have to get 100% of the project to actually start moving forward. And that's what we have to be flexible in that process, as you will know.
And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I understand the governor has a heavy ask in his capital budget proposal, and then we also recognize we're not the only community in Mason County that has some needs. So, but again, I think staff, Andy, and the crew have done a great job putting work into these and making sure that they're real and not, back in the cocktail napkin stuff like you've seen in the past.
I'd be interested in at the stormwater, some of the stormwater plants that you got. That's going to definitely be next, probably big on our list, as you will know. So, do you have any kind of report on what that might look like? All the improvements that we've done to sewer, is that going to put us in a good spot, or is it going to still be pretty significant?
Well, it's not, in 2019, it won't be significant. We get our new stormwater permit, that we will be a phase 2 permit that will go into effect in June of 2019. Not a lot of implementation in 19. It'll really start to ramp up in 2020, and we'll have a better idea of that once we actually get that permit. But it's phased in over 5 years, so it's a lot of inspecting to start with, and actually logging all of our storm lines and a cleaning process, which we already have. We've got quite a few of the elements that are going to be required already built in to the stormwater fund. It'll be, I'll tell you where the biggest burden likely will be for us. It will be the private storm systems and being able to access those and get in and actually inspect those, which is a requirement by, I believe, year 3. So it'll be into that summer of 2021 will be a fairly large lift for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Just keep us in the loop so
Absolutely.
we can get ahead of some of that stuff. I know it's going to be a burden, a significant burden.
It will be, and we have already started through the process of doing a rate study on the stormwater utility. It's going to be a heck of a burden on that utility that's already struggling somewhat without any increased revenue is going to be difficult. So, but we'll certainly, we've already started talking about that, and I think we'll commission a rate study in early 2019 and take it to the council after we complete it.
I think Troy kind of mentioned it. What was the process going from the council list to the priority list?
It was just feasibility and readiness, shovel ready. I think the list, obviously, that the council approved over the summer was larger, but I think it just working with staff, what was ready to make the ask, and then also, the feasibility of getting certain projects done given the limitations on the budgets. Does that answer your question?
I think it was one of the big things too with pushing that railroad project was having those matching funds from TIB and really just, I guess, our portion of that match and like Troy said, just the shovel readiness of that one.
The matching funds, and who sat through my budgeting 101 session, the matching funds play a huge role, and these guys will tell you that too. If you have that other sources to back the state dollars, it increases the achievability of getting funding for your state, for your asks. So that weighed heavily too.
Time-wise, how long is the project for well 1? Do that if you have the money today?
Well 1 is under 10% design now. We're going to go through, we've got hopefully after this coming Tuesday, we will have money in the 2019 budget to do the investigation and rehab of well 1. And then it will be full design, and then into 2020, likely, you're probably looking at about a 6-month construction period. There's not a ton to that project. There's no services off of that. It's strictly a transmission line between well 1 and the high school tank, so not a lot of, if it is done through a cured in place type process, not a lot of restoration. It's really going to be design and build of the booster pump station will be the biggest one.
How much roughly is it to bring us the full design, just to do that?
It's about a $250,000 process for us for design.
So as Dan alluded to earlier, the capital budget has significant stress this year for a number of reasons, both statewide and then locally within the entire district. And so I'm just trying to paint a realistic picture that this is gonna be very tough to do. You know, but one of the things I learned from, when I was first in the capital budget is create your own bow wave. You know, because once the state has spent money, it doesn't wanna lose that by not coming to fruition. So it just might be more realistic just to get design money and then wait and go for the rest of it to the next biennium. Again, I'm just trying to be pragmatic with things. It's going to be a tough job to get anything north of $500,000-600,000. I really do.
Yeah, and if that's certainly your guys' recommendation, I certainly think we can revamp the ask and tune that back so that maybe it is just design money, or maybe it covers the rehab of well one. Like I said, we've got it budgeted right now at about $250,000. So maybe that would be a better use right now to do the rehab and actual investigation of well one, to be able to plan into the future what that other project actually looks like.
And I think I'd like to bring Kirk Pearson out and just have him look at Shelton and kind of look over what you're doing. He might have programs that, I mean, he's asked us to really try to keep him involved. And since he's asked, let's bring him out. And there might be some stuff that we can work on with USDA or even Homeland Security that gets these things done in a different manner.
I know we poked around with USDA last fall, but I don't know that anything came to fruition.
Most everything we found was loans.
Right.
And I guess that was where our focus was, and I think not to speak for the council, but I think looking at our utility bills in a whole between sewer and water, being one of the largest utility rates in the state, we raised one, we're essentially raising both of them. So that, I guess, was really the focus for not looking for loans necessarily, and that's really what we found, unless there's some other program that we didn't find. But
it just might be a good idea to bring him out. Like I said, he's
Absolutely.
asking, so let's see if we can involve him, especially for economic development. They do have, you know, so it might not even be on this list, but it might be on the further list that we find something that we can check off.
Plus Kirk's a good friend. He's served with these
He's a
guys.
great friend, yeah,
Great
he's
guy.
a wonderful guy.
I think to Drew's point, the request for well one, you know how the form pretty much breaks it down precisely between construction and then design and all those other items. I mean, I don't think it'll require too much alteration of the actual request, but when they get in the back room and decide who gets what, that's when you give us a haircut.
Well, that's when we call you and say, Troy, get it done.
Right.
And we don't have any problem having, in fact, we welcome that
Having it
conversation
ready.
and be able to provide you whatever information you want. If that's scaling down or paring something out, let us know, we'll have it to you as quickly as we can.
And would it be helpful for us to, I guess, develop that in phases so that you could see,
A
here's.
fallback position always
Okay.
helps, it really does.
We'll certainly do that.
I have a question based on your comments. This is new to me. Are you saying that we scale back the well one design, 250K?
Well, it's already in the form.
I understand that, but another project that may be lower priority, at least in my view, with lower amount, might get funded instead of maybe more money for the well one project. Is that,
Well, I mean, that comes
the way
down to
it
you
works?
guys, the truth of the matter is on member request projects, there are a few exceptions. It really comes down to what the member ends up wanting. So you tell me what your priority is. I mean, I don't want to make that pick for you.
Understood, okay.
But what the big ask right now in our district is taking the North Mason sewer and extending it to the South Kitsap Industrial Corridor. The city of Bremerton is heading that request. It's $11 million. And it's time critical because it goes in conjunction with doing the Belfair bypass. And it'll solve a lot of issues, which, not for Shelton, but for the county as a whole, and for, and so that's what we're up against, is finagling that in conjunction with other assets we have. That's the lift we're up against. Because again, they are time critical because of it has to coincide with, once the Belfair bypass is done, if that doesn't happen, it's not going to. Because you'd have to rip up a brand new. So that's.
But I think we certainly have some capacity to get, a lot of this done. I mean, it's not, well, they're not totally done, but if we had a scalable position, we'd be better off.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
I also think, having been a little bit familiar with the YMCA project, and you guys are obviously big supporters of that, I think they've done very well in their capital fundraising and the competitive grant program, but they're still gonna need 500 to 750 to close the deal. And so that's another demand. That's not a city-sponsored project, but obviously the city supported because of the leasing of the land and some of these other improvements that will help that. So certainly understand the benefit. Having worked as staff on capital budget though also, I don't think it ever hurts to ask and get a project in front of the budget writers, knowing that you'll be back in another biennium.
Well, you know, Richard's going to come to us in March and say, you can have this, but how much can you cut from this?
Right, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a lot more art than science.
It
I wish
is.
I could tell people differently, but there's a lot of factors that go in and it's not just numbers, so.
Yeah.
There's always wild cards that happen too.
That one in
That's-
particular,
that
though,
is-
would be fairly easy to scale, so.
Yeah. Well, we got 400,000 from the North Mason Boys and Girls Club last year because frankly another member upset Richard, so I took it.
I've seen it happen.
It is what it is, I mean, I'm always looking at who's pissing who off. And
Make sure you don't upset anyone.
I know.
But if you remember last session, we had 7 million in total capacity for the state until the very end of session.
Yeah.
And because we had done our homework and these guys went to bat for us, we got the call in February and were able to get the library funding and some others. So it just, you never know.
Yeah.
So you always want to be ready and get your requests in and have them ready to go, but you never know when money's going to break loose. So.
Right.
Yeah, I was calling Troy about 8:30 at night. Troy, did you get the request in yet? Did you get the request in yet? Did you get the request in yet?
We did.
Yes, you did.
Then the transportation side, you're not on there. Yeah, never been on there, have you?
No, I might be this year.
I know, we'll know in 2 days.
Yeah. I hear I'm not going to be on all the committees I want to be on, so.
So I mean, I can't, I know there's different potential tax and fee schemes being proposed on the transportation side right now. I can't speak real intelligently to how that budget's shaping up, but we'll certainly support these, it's not an issue.
I think that process is a little bit different than
Yeah.
the capital budget, where your experience is. But these get submitted in the form of a letter, and you guys were kind enough to sponsor that through Ed Orcutt. Was he transferred last time?
Yeah, you know, he's on finance.
He's going
now.
back to finance, so there'll be another.
I might have to transfer, we'll
Say that on the camera.
Say that softly.
So he's going to learn really quick how to process transfer requests.
So that's that, yeah.
Good. Thank you for this process. It helps. It really does. When we went through that process last time, I think it really did help. So I thank you for that.
Well, and it certainly helps too to have a delegation that works really well together, and everybody was on the same page last session. That the proof was in the pudding. We were able to bring home some dollars for the community. So thank you guys for taking the time.
Well, I don't want to see the momentum go away. I think I'm loving what I'm seeing, and we got a lot of momentum. Let's just keep it going.
The other way that I mean, some of this can come to fruition too is that we've worked well with Tim, and we'll get stuff slipped in one chamber's budget, not the other, and that's not a bad thing because typically those don't get whacked out. I mean, so Tim's been able to put stuff in over there, and we go on something else there so that we get it all. I mean, we always figure that cobweb out closer to those budgets, final budgets coming out.
Good capital budget writers puts a little bit of float in their initial proposal, so when it comes time to reconcile the two sides, you have the resources to do that. Yeah, it doesn't always work, but that's usually how it works.
Anything else? You need anything?
You want to deal with the politician down the street?
Which one?
There's a lot of them.
I know.
You're being
Council members, do you have any, I mean, like, Bob, I know you said that first time kind of going through this, I mean, do you guys have any questions for either staff or?
I can sound like a broken record to talk about the
intersection at the...
Yes, you could.
Where the kids are dodging cars every day because there's no stop sign or stop light, or there's a flashing light. but-
So the project that Councilmember Nisco is speaking of is the intersection at the junior high on Wallace Nealon. That
Oh, yeah.
likely with the YMCA is going to become an issue for us in the future also. So that corridor, we have looked at an entire corridor project. So just to make you aware of that, we're not just looking at those two roundabouts at this point. We are looking at that entire Wallace Nealon Boulevard. And any help that you can give us with the state would be much appreciated at Olympic Highway North and Wallace Nealon. That is a state-owned intersection.
Oh, did you have any report on that? We talked last time about DOT supposedly had some money for that.
They have not cut loose any of their money. We have been talking to them on a regular basis, and to this.
So we'll ask that question again. Where's that money that you had?
Yes, and certainly if you go through that intersection at all, you can see how literally it is just falling apart. The curb ramps and the medians and everything else are just literally crumbling.
Why does somebody need to get across right there? What if you just close that off and if they gotta go that way, they can send them down then towards the stoplight that you're gonna replace with a roundabout, or up towards the stoplight where Walmart is? Why do they have to cross right there? I mean, I was on the other side, is that pullout?
Pedestrian crossings?
Yeah.
Well, the kids are going over to the two different schools.
Right, well, couldn't they not?
They could do very well do that, but they're coming out of the power lines, they got a shortcut, that's where they end up one way or the other. And there's a turnout there that parents will use to pull their car in there, drop their kid there to run across the school. Those are the two convenience wise. I mean, there's no law or logistics wise, it's just convenience. They come from the power lines across that, and there's that pullout.
The short answer to that though, Drew, is they're gonna cross there whether there's a crosswalk or not. It's the easiest way to go. They literally, we get a ton of foot traffic from over around Mountain View School, K Street area that cut through there. They cut through the power lines, and it's easy. And really, we see them, I know Darren probably sees it all the time. They literally just run across Wallace Nealon. So, I mean, wherever it's easiest to cross is where they're going to cross.
I mean, I'm a guilty parent. I used to do that, drop the kids off in that. But I've seen too many kids, including a video I took just a few months ago. I was there 5 minutes and a kid about got hit. There's 4 lanes of traffic. The kid starts walking, this car stops, the next car doesn't, or on the other side, that car doesn't stop. I mean, this kid was this close.
How much does a pedestrian only signal cost? You know, so it's always on green unless you, I mean, I'm just curious how much those, you know, so you actually stop traffic.
If I had to guess, you're
Yeah.
probably talking 250 grand at least. Yeah, they're not cheap.
We have downtown, how much
The rapid flashes are about 20 grand, 25 to install.
I mean, if you look at, I don't know cost-wise.
We have those there now.
Cost-wise better than what I did, but rapid flashes along with lighted crosswalks I've seen work, where they just have the lighted crosswalks and at least light up the lanes in front as you're coming forward.
Lit crosswalks are very expensive and very high maintenance. And we do have rapid flashers at that intersection now.
Right, but for the inside lanes.
Yeah.
What I've seen work in some of those places like you're talking about is the lighted crosswalks. It's not the best you're gonna be able to do there.
And we have vetted those. We've talked to Olympia, Lacey, we've talked to some other agencies, and they are very problematic and very expensive to maintain.
Yeah, the lights in the road. We
Yes.
we contemplated that for Allen, and we went with just the flashers on either
Yeah.
side. It just did not work out for Highway 3.
Yeah, they're difficult. But yeah, looking at that entire roadway, but I mean, even at the Chevron there and Walmart, eventually making that, you know, just an entire corridor project. And we looked at a federal option for that and just thought, let's ask for 15 million and let's just do the whole thing. You know, having it be a corridor out to Highway 3. And it's still a possibility. We've still been looking at that. So we've looked at every option for that roadway, but ultimately in the years to come, I think it's going to need it.
One thing we may see with YMCA as well is, I know they've talked about a parking agreement with the school district at OBJH, and so they very well propose that existing driveway onto Wallace Needham will be their driveway as well. So if we start seeing some design work that really concentrates, which is better than having a driveway next to it, obviously, out of Wallace Needham, but we'll need to see some traffic study to see what happens. They may well have to signalize or do something different there anyway.
They may need to do some signal or some intersection improvements there.
Correct.
Through the project.
With one of the warrants being the pet traffic there.
Yeah.
On that study,
Yeah.
that would just scream. And then if that section of roadway gets completed and subdivided someday
Correct.
across the street,
Correct.
it's a four-way intersection.
Correct.
You asked a little bit about my needs or public safety needs. Most of what we've done after is our own funding to get stuff done, like the body cameras and private camera donations and things like that. But I can tell you, telecare is going away, and VHO is taking over the telecare jobs, I guess you could say. So money-wise, no, but health-wise from public safety, I can tell you mental health is still at the top of the list. It was lucky enough, we actually have a seat at the table now with the Thurston Mason VHO. It's not just Thurston. And so, building this place over here with the old PED, but mental health is still at the top of the list, and VHO is getting revamped already. And they're taking over the telecare duties because telecare is going away, which has been a great partner as the mobile outreach program for us. And so those are going to be questions I'm sure that you're going to have as they come up. And the opioid crisis isn't going away, but I can tell you, Mason, the proactivity here has been pretty good in our partnership with the health department, and they've been able to secure private funding for the Narcan. Knock on wood, we haven't had near the overdoses in this whole area as we have in years past.
I'm actually impressed with myself. We're not giving our can as much as we were giving.
0 deaths this year.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
But I think a big portion of that is due to partnerships with AID and Ben over in the health department. They've been great with us. UW has given us medicine. And it's us getting a seat at the table and all these things that we hadn't had in the past, and now we're actually going out and getting these done. But I'll be the first to say I wasn't a fan of Narcan when they said we need to carry it. But I can tell you, after seeing what it does, the program we've got in place locally is nice because it's a small town. So we literally walk over or fax the follow-up that night from an overdose to AID at the health department, and they will go out and do follow-up the next day and see what kinds of services they have available for those people.
Let me ask this question. We have a possibility of doing some demonstration work on embedded social workers, that sort of thing. Is that, if we could get the funding to do something temporary, is that something you might have capacity to?
Absolutely. In fact, that's part of what I talked about, homeless intervention team. I say homeless because that encompasses a large group of people.
Yes, it does.
But there's models out there that have been put in place. I worked in a model that was put in place.
So Holmes County is the one that we tried last year, and we just got a report from the sheriff, and he's loving it, and their success rates off the sheriff.
Pastor.
Yeah.
Sheriff Pastor. So, and I can tell you, and I'm going to sound selfish, you're going to have a bigger impact in the small leagues.
I know. That's why I wanted it here.
It's the same people we deal with day in and day out. We know them by name.
Yes.
Where King County or those are going to have numbers that are going to look really great, but the actual impact they're going to have is going to be a fraction of what you're going to have in a place like this. And we already have a young lady named Taylor who works for Victim Services here in Thurston Mason County. We gave her an office space. She comes down here at least one day a week and sits here and works with our detectives as a victim's advocate. We've had offers from Ben and AID. We've had offers from telecare. Well, it wouldn't be hard for us to reach out and find a partner, team that with an officer, and that's their full-time job, is to go out and outreach to these people, get them the resources, get them reunited or reunified with wherever they need to be, and help them succeed.
Well, I'm glad you said yes, because I was seriously considering offering up Shelton as a test bed. So.
I'm telling you now, and I've got officers here who said, look, and they do it now, but they're answering 20 patrol calls a day while they're doing it. And so if that becomes, hey, this is your full-time job, I've had officers here say, we could get help for these people because they don't know where to go. They go here and the door gets shut, they go here and the door gets open for a minute, and they go here. It's getting them and surrounding them and going, how do we get you where you need to be?
Good. Well, we're going to be working on it. Look forward to that maybe being a possibility. We're moving more to community health instead of long-term, less at the big state hospitals and more community work.
Yeah, and in this area, we're in such I call it a hole, because there is no resources around us. They got to get them to Thurston.
Yeah.
They're going to get anything, or down to Kitsap in Bremerton. We just opened a mental health facility there, but we're not allowed to use it. But it's those partnerships that you start making, where sometimes it's just that simple, how do I get there? You know, and if they have an officer that's able to help them bridge that gap, find somebody with a social worker, a veterans care worker, a mental health worker. We've got the partnerships in place.
Yeah.
It'll be tough to do.
Good, thank you.
At the Mason County Housing Authority, they've talked about a potential bill that would directly fund the housing authority, the county, from state sales tax, go directly to that and go through the Department of Commerce for a grant or something. It's part of it would come back. Do you know anything about?
It's part of the governor's larger ask. It's quite large ask. Yeah.